I imagine from looking at you that most likely everyone in this room has had at least one thing happen to you that was so significant in your experience, so huge in your background, had such an impact on you, that if I ask you to think about it, it'd be like it happened earlier this morning. I mean, on rare occasions, something will happen to you that has so much impact, that is so charged up, that is so significant in our experience, that it's kind of indelibly burned into our brains, and we carry it around with us forever. The 31st of August, 1967, I was a somewhat younger naval aviator. I was flying an A4 aircraft off the aircraft carrier Wiskany. We were in the Gulf of Tonkin, about 60 miles from the coast of North Vietnam. Among all the other stuff, I remember very clearly they fired in succession from way out in front of us 2 surface-to-air missiles. So I sat in my cockpit that day and I watched the first missile. It was just a little bitty point of light sitting on my windshield. And it just sat there. And it got bigger and brighter and bigger and brighter till finally it started to move on the windshield. So this thing starts moving. I knew it wouldn't hit me. I turned my attention to the second missile. And it just sat there. And it's this little point of light. And it's getting bigger and brighter and bigger and brighter. Till finally I decided if it wouldn't move, I would. I decided to just roll my airplane up on its back, go across the top of the only airplane on the right, come down on the outside, press onto the target. And it did seem like a good idea at the time until I was upside down over this airplane beside me. The missile went right between us. Fireball blew the tail section off my airplane. This thing was wallowing and tumbling and falling through the sky. Going through 4,000 feet, I got a glimpse of my altimeter, ejected from the airplane, had a parachute, landed in the middle of a small North Vietnamese village. Now I'm standing out in the middle of a rice paddy. I have mud up to the middle of my calves. I'm watching that airplane coming right straight at me. I get this little radio. For the life of me, I couldn't get that radio turned on. I'm watching him and he's getting closer and I'm trying to get this doggone thing. And by the way, this isn't a complicated machine. It only has like 2 little buttons on it, but I can't get the buttons in the right sequence. And he's getting closer and closer and closer. Till finally, I promise you, by blind luck, about the time he boomed across the top, I managed to mash down on the right combination of buttons on that little radio, and it sparked to life, which allowed me to say, in my very finest airline pilot drawl, somebody get me out of here, I need help, somebody come get me out of here. And I started babbling on this radio, and my voice was up about 3 octaves. The best thing that happened was I ran myself out of breath. And when I ran out of breath, I had to pause the inhale, and when I paused the inhale, I let off one of those buttons on that radio, which allowed Dean to get a word in edgewise. And he said, "You know, we cannot come and get you." At which point, I couldn't think of anything clever to say. And Dean said, "I'll see you when this is over." And he flew away. And I stood out there in the middle of the rice paddy. It was like I was the only person in the entire universe. It was just me out there by myself, all alone. And probably I don't have to describe that to you too much, because I think I'd be willing to bet money that we've all had times in our lives when you get that alone feeling. I wasn't alone for very long, of course. The next thing that happened was I was immediately surrounded by about 1 million North Vietnamese. I was kept locked up for years in cells that were never quite big enough for a number of people who were in them. On average, I lived with about 6 or 8 other guys, maybe. I've been by myself for a few months. I lived with a group of 20 men one time for a year and a half. We just slept on concrete floors or on pallets made out of wood or concrete. We were not allowed to see or have any contact with any Americans outside of our own cell. First thing we did, always, was work out this whole communications process. We used to have cell meetings. We always had 100% attendance at our meetings. I was the French professor. The way that happened was they came in one day, they took 2 of us out, and they split us up, and they began to beat on us. And they told us they had a guard listening outside that door, and he heard us talking about things we were not allowed to talk about. They don't understand English very well, and we are getting hammered for what they think we're saying. So we came to the only logical conclusion, which was, we would quit speaking English. What we decided to speak was Pig Latin, yes! We set aside a whole evening to review the rules for the grammatical construction of Pig Latin. My roommates, who were going crazy trying to speak Pig Latin, decided we should immediately shift to French. That when I start to tell this story, and I get you to start to picture this whole thing, and I say, hey, how do you suppose we did that? What would you have done? And you start to tell me, that looks a whole lot like life and work to me. I mean, I know for an absolute fact that there are days when you are thinking to yourself, if I could just get away from it, I need to escape for a little while. These people are driving me crazy. See, some of you might be thinking that right now, but don't get your hopes up. How easy is it for you to start to feel like somehow you're getting disconnected? How easy is it for us to start to feel like we're losing contact somehow with the people that we work for, the people who work? How easy is it for us to start feeling all alone and isolated and out of touch? I know that if the communications process isn't working very well for you, where you are, I know who has to fix it. You do. If the communications process isn't working well at home, with spouses, with family, with people that are important to you, I know who has to fix it. You do. How do you cope with the pressure in your lives? How do you keep things in some sort of perspective? How do you deal with the stress? I'll tell you something else I learned in prison. I know clearly, unequivocally, beyond a shadow of any doubt, who's responsible for the coping and balance in your life. You are. And if you don't take care of it, your life is going to get so messed up. It's easy to mess our lives up. How easy is it for us to ruin relationships that are important to us? Easy, I think. I found out that I don't have to do that by myself. First of all, I found out that the Lord God, creator of the universe, cares about me. And he cares about you. We don't have to do this balancing act ourselves. Secondly, I found out that I got people around me that can help me do this balancing act. How do we do it? We did what we had to do. We did our best. We chose to grow through that experience. We kept our sense of humor, and we kept the faith. Faith in ourselves, our ability to endure. Got it out. Sun's coming up tomorrow, and I'm going to be there. Faith in ourselves. See, I see that as directly translatable into your lives. Faith in ourselves. Faith in ourselves to be able to do what we have to do. Faith in ourselves to be able to stand on our feet and say, this is right and this is wrong. Faith in ourselves to be able to sell day after day after day after day. Faith in ourselves no matter what. And that's that kind of faith and confidence in each other that allows us to work together, live together effectively. It's all built on a foundation of trust and confidence. All of my experience teaches me that no matter what happens to us in our lives, no matter what goes on around us, we have been given the ability to choose how we're going to live our lives.